welcome everyone to this Wednesday Live, third one of the year, and now I've got Scott Kuhn joining us today. Scott, he is just an amazing man with all the things that he's done, and we're going to be hearing about how he's turned millions into billions through his work that he's done. Scott, why don't you introduce yourself to the people watching who may not know who you are?
Sure. My name is Scott Kuhn. I am in the finance industry and have been for 31 years, 20 of which has been in leadership and helping organizations build out specific markets that are tough to challenging to get a hold of. And I'm doing that right now with my current position with a nationwide organization, financial institution here in America. I am married. I have 2 children, my wife, Andy, and my children, my son, Kip, and my daughter, Bella. And that's pretty much it. Work is what I do. I call it work, but that's only for those that don't understand that passion and work can be the same thing. So I say work so people understand it, but it is a passion for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite interesting. Actually, let's talk about that, because you say work and passion. Some people say purpose. Work is where you find a purpose. You're doing something to be useful. But also passion, it makes you happy. You've got your wife, you've got your kids. What is it about the work that makes you feel fulfilled? Why do you do it?
Well, I think going through my own growth, which, by the way, that never ends. I'm 56 and I'm still growing. I'm still learning. I'll probably learn today from some of the questions you asked that sort of reinvigorate my mind. But going through my career, making the mistakes that I've made and learning from others' mistakes, and taking that and giving that to other people so that they can learn from what I've already taken on the chin, if you will. And I think to me, that drives a real sense of purpose and a satisfaction that, you can't get by just punching a clock and, going to work. So if I can look at someone, and I've done this, I coach many people over the years, and I coach 2 right now, and I watch them grow. Many of those folks now have their own businesses. They started young and worked their way up. So I'm taking them through the same path I went through. But any way along that path, I can insert someone in and take them from that point forward rather than starting at 0. So,
brilliant. Yeah, taking them from that A to B, and I've had those mentors and coaches in my life.
Right, and you'll see as we talk, I'll get more and more excited. It's just natural. People always say, "Man, you get excited when you talk." So you'll see that as we go along.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's going to be great to see, and great to see Hal just come in here saying, "Great to see us." Anyone else wants to leave a comment like Hal just did, then write it along the bottom on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching. Scott will answer your questions. We'll pivot from there. But on what you were saying about growth, because you coach people, so you're coaching 2 right now, and I suppose you've had people who were leading you throughout your life.
Oh, for sure.
Mentoring you. Like, any early examples of those kind of people for you?
When you're younger in the business, or even when you're established, there's like 2 ends of this spectrum. So when you're younger, it's tough sometimes to get, a mentor that's going to take the time for you, because there's a huge amount of investment required to take someone from that ground level, as I call it. And then on the opposite side of that, when you're experienced, like right now, for me to find a mentor, it's difficult sometimes, because I'm looking for something so specific to add to what I've already built up over the years. And I suspect that folks on here, some of the attendees I see are, chief revenue officers, CEOs, and so forth. You have a specific agenda for your coach. You just don't need motivation, right? You have a specific agenda. You're trying to help your business grow. You're trying to increase your COIs. You're trying to do something that's going to help your business and your personal satisfaction grow. And it's hard to find a mentor specifically for you. So it's those 2 ends are the most difficult. In the middle somewhere, it's a little easier, because you can, take a little bit from here and a little bit from there. So, but I've had, when I worked, employers. So I had one manager years ago that, to this day, we stay friends, and he's been a great, I mean, I'm talking 15 years ago. And he was, in fact, I think I modeled myself after him a little bit. I'm a little direct. I'll tell you like it is, in as pleasant a manner as possible, which you may not think is pleasant, but I'm not harsh. I'm not mean, but it's important to get to the point and make sure that the time you have together with your coach is effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what you just said about modeling. I suppose that for myself, and maybe for you, is that you saw something that you want to emulate in a way and make your own. And that's what I've done with some of the mentors in my life. And same thing, they see something in me, and the men, predominantly men who I mentor or coach, I see something in them, a little bit of myself where I can,
Right.
wow, yeah.
Yeah, there's a certain kind of animal that does what what you and I do, and others, that I think it drives from that passion that I mentioned in the beginning, in the opening. I think it really does, because you're if you're doing this for for money, good luck, because you're not gonna be able to keep your clients.
Yeah.
They need that drive, they need that passion, they need that feeling from you, going, man, I'm going to leave this call, or I'm going to leave this team's call, and I'm going to go out and conquer the world. And if you can't deliver that, you're not going to be too successful for very long, because you're going to be running through clients constantly.
100%. And people can smell that, they sense it, they literally sniff it. I mean, we're both in sales, I call it commission breath sometimes.
Yeah, really, commission breath. I never heard that. I love that, man. I'm going to start using that. I like that. Yeah,
steal it from me. Great people steal, great artists steal, I think Picasso said. But that whole sense of the passion that you exude, you just feel it, man. I mean, and that gets them to go, because people don't need more motivation, just as you said. They need more inspiration. Inspiration is the action. Motivation is the good feeling. You want to get a good feeling, watch a movie. Yeah, I guess that's what the leaders, that's what you do for people when you coach and mentor them. You inspire them to take that action. That's how you've gotten people to do these amazing things, right?
Yes. And it's, again, I'm specific in most of my coaching. It's more for building sales teams that are productive and turning. See, there was always this belief in business when I was coming up, and it was, to grow your production or your volume or your sales, you need to grow your sales team. And I always thought, while that could be true, you could have, grow your sales team from 30 to 60. But if all those 60 sales folks or, reps are working at 50%, you might as well hire 40 at 90% if you could. So I wanted to see, efficiencies, right? Efficiencies. So in the millions to billions example, at starting at 200 million when I took over, I wanted to make sure that everyone in that group, number one, we had to, somebody's mentioned this in your post, you come in, you assess, cut the team in half, get rid of the, those that are dragging others down, or, negatives. And I don't mean, unceremoniously. I mean, you do it the right way, you follow protocol, but they need to follow you and your direction. And then you double it. So, I took it to 15 with 15 supports. That was 30. But those 15 people went from 200 million to $1 billion without adding any other salespeople. So that's the key to my coaching, is how do you take your existing personnel, identify those that are strong, because what do they say? 80% of the people, or 20% of people do 80% of the work.
Yeah, Pareto. Right? 20.
In that group that I had 60% of the people equal across the top, which is why the team was so ridiculously successful. But that's where I specialize, in that area.
Yeah, and I love that, what you said, and how, and you articulated it through the action to grow your sales team. So yeah, just brilliant. And that's exactly what you did there. And in terms of doing that, it's identifying who are the strong salespeople, the top performers, and then making them even stronger, growing them. And how do you do that? You get a sense, you can look at the numbers, I guess, who's hitting quota, but then when beyond the number, beyond the sheets and the graphs, it's the person, right? So what is it that you offer in the people?
Well, it's funny you say that, and that would be the common thinking is, let's take our top people and make them better. And when in reality, my top people did get better, but the increment that they got better is smaller, just because they're already near the top. So I like to identify those in the middle or lower middle, newbies, if you will, that are switching over to our business, and that the personality that they have, number one, the involvement they have with what I'm teaching and coaching, so they're engaged, and then their inquisitive responses. So they don't just say, "Oh yeah, I know. Oh yeah, I know that. I know that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great." Which you hear that all the time from salespeople, right? Yeah. And they go, wow, can you tell me more about that? So right away, I'm starting to connect on these people. And I in my head right now, I can see, I don't even know, 5 or 6 right now that I've done that to. So when I took over, I had a gentleman come in, he was doing 50 million, which where he was great.
Mhm.
He was with me in his 7th year, he did 250 million in sales,
wow.
which is
Yeah,
unbelievable in our business. I mean, that's a 7-figure earner right there. So, and he did that coming in thinking he was at the top of his game at 50 million. And to this day, he doesn't work for me any longer. He went on and did his own thing. But to this day, we talk almost every day. And he still says the same thing, like, wow, I never would have thought of it that way. And that's the whole point, right, Alex, is, a coach is a coach is a coach, but you need to find one that's going to resonate with you. Just because I have certain attributes that I think are going to help you, and you need to agree that they're going to help you. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. I happen to believe that my skill set that I'm trying to impart on folks is applicable to anyone that's in sales. And by the way, I believe everyone's in sales. I don't care what position you have, right? You're selling yourself, you're selling your company, you're selling your wares. You're trying to sell an idea. You're an accountant. You're pitching your boss, hey, we need to do XXX. You got to convince them, right? That's called sales.
Exactly.
So it's applicable. I think what you do is the same. You can apply it to pretty much any industry, any job, any position.
True. Yeah, everything is sales. I mean, like every situation, you're selling something, whether you realize it or not. What you said about that guy who thought he was top of his game, 50 mil, went to 250 mil for your help. It reminded me of the thing about Edmund Hillary. He was the first guy to climb Everest. And when he got to he said, people asked him, what did you see? And he said, I looked out and saw another peak. It's like he got to the highest mountain and kept going. That's the kind of thing that we do. We can't rest on our laurels, be lazy. We have to raise our own bar.
Right, exactly. To that point, and I try to articulate this in a bunch of different ways, but I'll try it in my basic way is when you're comfortable in your position and you're cruising along, you're doing well, but you're not growing. You have to get uncomfortable to grow. If you're not uncomfortable, how are you pushing yourself beyond your current level, like you just said, right? So if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And that was the number one piece that this gentleman that I'm talking about, I could say his name, but I think he's probably watching. That the number one point for him to this day has been, I have to keep getting myself uncomfortable to grow. Because honestly, when you're comfortable, here's your level, right? Here's your ceiling, and you're comfortable. If you can't build capacity beyond that, you're done. That's where you're going to end up. Yeah, so you got to get uncomfortable, create new routines, hire new coaches, create new opportunities with different industries perhaps that could mirror or could segue into, create a market, and then that'll take you to your new ceiling. And once you reach that and you're comfortable, then you create your next ceiling. So you have to get uncomfortable. You have to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's something I've experienced and really has hit home in the past 12 months. For me, comfort kills. Comfort kills. I say stuck. It's like, it's nice when here's the thing, bills are being paid, you're getting a regular salary. You don't need to do much for your relationship, your family. And then what? It will kill you in the long run. That's why leaning towards discomfort. But I think maybe this is made more for men. And you're a high-powered man. I'll say that. That's
you can say that, but
I'm going to say that. People can comment and be like, don't comment on that. But comment on whatever you feel like. People are saying here, someone wrote on Facebook here, great to see you. People are looking forward to it. But on that, I think for men, this whole idea of comfort, a lot of men will find their comfort zone and say it's here, and then they overexert themselves, go all the way over here. That's what I did for many years. I would push way beyond what I deem comfortable to the extreme. Now I find the edge and I lean slightly beyond that. What about you? People you help? Do you push them hard, or how do you coach them and teach them?
Well, I think that's the whole point right there, is that you just made while we're even having this conversation is, to take yourself, you say get uncomfortable. What does that mean, right? Does that mean I make myself uncomfortable by pushing myself over the edge and it's too strenuous for me, and it's impacting my relationship and my family and my health, right? The idea in my coaching is you have the three: your business, your health, and your marriage or relationships, whatever you want to call it. Those three, and if you know anyone in business that's successful, ask them if all three of those are going really well.
Yeah.
Usually one suffers. Usually.
True.
If you can get all three together, you got it humming along really, really well. But that's what we try to teach, is that balance, is because that's difficult. And if you don't have someone in your life to help you as a coach or a mentor, you're going to do what you just said. You're going to overexert yourself, or you're going to put your efforts somewhere that's not going to have a return that's best for you. And talk about wasted energy, right? So you're going to be putting all this energy into, you know what I need to do? I need to get on social media, and I need to spend X amount of dollars and X amount of time every day doing 2 posts a day for the next 9 months so I can get XXX. Well, guess what? You sell XYZ. That's not a real strong social media product to sell, whatever it might be. And maybe it's, it could be anything. So, and that's just an example. Or you could spend your efforts with the wrong client base. You're going after such a small segment, you could get a bigger bang for your efforts somewhere else. So without a coach, without a mentor, it's hard to teach yourself. We get in our own way,
Yeah, exactly. So, to that point, I remember this was many years ago. It was over 5 years ago. I did a series of workshops, trainings, and keynotes in Moscow. This was way back when, obviously. And in one of them, I was doing this workshop. It was all about growth. We had some entrepreneurs in, business people. And then I was talking about growth. And one of them just straight up said, look, we're in the metallurgy industry. How is this stuff about social media going to help us? And I was like, yeah, actually, the principles may apply, but you can't use the tactics. It's like, for him, posting on Facebook about steel, not going to cut it. This doesn't work that way. I mean, fair play. Exactly. And that whole thing you were saying with the three, it was like health, wealth, or business, and relationships. Those three common things. Like the people that come to me, they're typically like I was. I'm ex-PwC, so they're ex-Big Four, ex-McKinsey, ex-Bain, Boston, Goldman Sachs. And usually it's their health that suffers because they've been taught they have to work 14-hour days. That eventually affect their relationships. But what about the people you help? What about them? Which of the three is usually out of alignment, if one of the three, or is it a mix?
Well, typically the people that I work with are high achievers, which I'm sure you can relate. So the people that I work with, it's either one or two, and it's either the relationship or the health, or both. Because they're driving so hard at business, especially if you're a business owner or you're a leader or you're a CEO, a C-level, C-suite executive, or a high level, division or, director. You're spending a lot of time, especially in the early parts of your career or when you're starting a business. And, I talk about mistakes. You talked about being, comfortable. Success can make you comfortable. And when I was running my big team, to that level, to over billion two, by the way, just so we're clear, not just a billion. That was in 12 months. So when I was running that team, it got so well oiled that I got comfortable. And then I found myself starting to slack off a little bit, and identified it myself through coaching. So when I said earlier that I'll learn from this today, as I'm speaking to my folks that I coached at the time, I found myself in some of those comments, and I was like, man, because I was, it was just rolling in. Everybody was well oiled. If I had 2 problems a day, that might have been it. And I was out there just trying to create more opportunity, but we were so busy with what we had, with the team we had, and everybody was humming at such a high, I just sort of relaxed a little bit, and I found myself slipping. So it can happen at your highest points, and it certainly can happen at your lowest points. So you're right. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And maybe you don't want to grow, but your people do, your team does, your business does. I guarantee you that. So a little part of you still has to be uncomfortable. If not for you, then for the other people that you support in your business or your business itself.
Yeah, because we are thinking about ourselves most of the time, if not all the time. And I was going to play devil's advocate with you. I was like, well, what if you can accept you don't want to grow? Some people don't want the trophy or the next billion or the this or that, and they are happy and content and can accept that. But what you said now, what about your team? Take the eyes off yourself for a moment, correct?
What about your business? What about your team? What about the people that you hire that work for you, that bust their butt for you? They want to continue to grow, and they need you to drive the opportunity in some cases, right? Or at least help them drive the opportunity. And you can't do that if you're tapped out. I had CEO I worked with before, and his favorite saying was, if you can't build capacity, I'm done with you. I don't have any room for you. And he was serious as a heart attack. He said, because we have to grow with what we have. We can't just keep adding people, because your profit margins are going to stay the same or get smaller. And that's assuming everyone produces at the level of the people that are already at the organization. So if we can make the people here more efficient and add people that are even more efficient, then you're going to build exponentially without the expense that typically comes along with that old mentality of you have to add staff to add sales, which I absolutely despise, because I don't believe it.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing: you have to look at those margins as you scale. But as you scale, previously where you could spend maybe $1, get back $3. At the high levels, it may be spend $1, get back 20 cents, and like they're looking at optimizing all of these areas.
Right. If you do that, when you do that, typically that's in your initial growth mode where you're going to have to reinvest a lot. But if you're doing that down the road, you have a full robust company and you're spending all this money on less efficient team members. I don't think there's a reason for that. You're comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it, because it's also uncomfortable to cut team members. There's been a lot of layoffs in a lot of industries, tech most notably over the last 2 years. I used to work at Meta, and although I left before the big layoffs, the first round, I know a lot of people who are and still are affected by that, and people in other tech companies. It's funny because at the last company I worked at, the guy even said, there's not going to be any layoffs, and that's the thing they say where there are going to be layoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, but that's uncomfortable to fire people. It doesn't have to be a mass layoff, but I mean, obviously, you had to cut people. How do you go about doing that? Because that feels uncomfortable, not just for them, but obviously for you. But it has to be done.
I could say easily that I've laid off. Well, I didn't say lay off. And I don't even like to say cut. I've released folks more than I've hired, because I take teams that are productive and make them very productive and more efficient, which creates productivity. But a lot of times it's just most simplest of things. Like I'm a visual learner, so I tell a lot of stories. So I'm trying to minimize those today, but I tell a lot of stories. So
go for it. I love stories.
Yeah. So I took over
stories.
Yeah. So when I took over this team, we had some folks on there that had been there for a while, and when I started, I had come from, this is Wells Fargo. I had come from one part of the organization and stepped up to the wealth division to run a whole team for 3 states. And some of that team had a manager previously that was what I call a babysitter. So they would just do their tasks for them. They wouldn't help them grow. They wouldn't help them achieve. They were never around. They were just, you need this done or that done or this done. So I had these 3 folks that had been there for a while. And I started getting phone calls from them when I took over. Hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? And I said, well, no, that's your job. That's what you do. Well, I never had to do it before. Well, you're gonna have to figure it out. I can help you figure it out, but you're gonna have to figure it out. And it got to the point that those 3 people were set in their ways so strongly. They went to HR and said, hey, Scott's being too rough on us, or he's making us do these things we never did before. And needless to say, HR came back and said, hey, he's holding everybody in your team accountable the same exact way. There's nothing different about what he's doing with you than he is with anyone else. It's your reaction to that. So those 3 folks left on their own. So what I like to do is show them opportunity where they can go and what they can be. And that's typically through their peers, because the peers are taking advantage of what we're doing. And they're going to make a choice on their own to leave. And typically, we leave with good terms. Sometimes they look at you and they like to blame somebody, because that's what a lot of people do. But as I said earlier, when I take over teams, I typically shrink it to about half of where it is. Because I'd be happy to take over an ultra high producing team, but I like building teams. It's that pride thing. And by the way, that helps a lot too. And people used to ask me, how are you efficient? It's so effective day after day after day. And then you do things that, what I call non-income producing activities. So we do a lot of introductions to the other part of the organization. So we're doing a transaction for someone who has maybe 100 million away, or globally we call it, not with our organization. Well, we could go ahead and do our transaction, our $13 million, commercial loan or whatever it is, and move on our merry way. But I want an organization to be successful. So I'm going to take that individual and introduce them to someone, and I'll bring that person to the table. And lo and behold, many times, they'll bring a portion or all of that money over because they get a benefit for doing that with the transaction they're doing with us at the time. But also because a lot of times that comfort level, the guys on the other side of that are managing the money now, they're comfortable. They're not proactive. And we ask the question, how's your wealth advisor doing right now? When's the last time you talked to him? They're like, I talk to him whenever I call him. So, he's getting comfortable. So we'll take advantage of that. But think about that, right? That little one activity of being aware of what that consumer has outside of our organization that's going to help the organization and help the consumer create a suite of products around them. That took me seconds in my head, but it created a tremendous value, not only for me, because I got the customer, for the consumer, and for my partner inside the organization who's going to manage those funds. And guess what that partner is going to do from now on? Go out of their way to work with me and send me business. And that's how you build that momentum. If you don't care, they're not going to care. And that's one of the other mantras I live by is give before you get. I live by that in life, in business, personal, relationship, everything. Give before you get. Value follows value. You provide value, you're going to get value back.
Exactly. Yeah, and those seconds or even minute in your head build Mars momentum outwards. Yeah, exactly. And what you were just saying now is that with the people, they can either go together or grow together. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's the second thing I'm taking from you today. No.
Good. This is it.
I'm learning.
Giving a lot to each other. And I was just checking LinkedIn. We've got quite a few CROs and CEOs on LinkedIn. And we were just talking about building teams, constructing those teams. So that's what you come in and do, is that you look and you build those high-performing teams. And that's what you like to do. And then that involves letting some people, again, you say releasing, but bringing in the right faces. And how involved are you in that from, let's talk about recruitment for a second, top down, because obviously there's HR involved. Do you step in, or where do you give your input, or is it?
No, HR is involved after.
Okay.
We'll put the posting out if we're going to do that. But typically in my business, recruiting is through a network of your own. Yeah, because there's known entities in our business that that everybody wants to work with, and frankly, the biggest ones in Pennsylvania, where I live and work most of the time, for my quote unquote job, 5 of the known entities are my team members that I brought up the top. Right. So they're always getting recruited constantly, money thrown at them constantly. But I identify those people. I go to HR and say, this is what I need you to set up a posting, because you got to go through especially with big organizations, you got to follow a process. They got to apply, and then you got to make sure you're giving equal DEI, all that other stuff.
Of course, yeah.
Yep. So, which is important. And then HR will take over once they agree that we have a transaction, because we got to put a deal together and what kind of comp you're going to get up front and that kind of stuff, because our business is all about that. So I'm involved in it more than HR is, basically.
Okay.
Because and also once they get hired, then they come back to me and I'm the one that's getting them going. Yeah. Exactly. And there's a question on here. I don't know if you see, Alex.
How that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that standing still may seem to be okay, but becoming willing to get uncomfortable and grow, should that be the standard or the minimum? Interesting question. What do you reckon?
That's a personal choice, and it goes back to what you said earlier about what if you're comfortable being comfortable, right? If you're comfortable being comfortable, I would say you have to think about your team and your business. Mm-hmm. Is with you being comfortable, is that going to impact them negatively? Probably. It probably will, because they're going to need you to be dynamic, at least as dynamic as you were to get to where you are. That doesn't mean you have to, quote, work as hard as you did before. You just need to be able to work smarter and take some of that that drive that you've had to get to where you are, and impart that into your team. So is it the standard or the minimum? I mean, in my world, it's the minimum, but it doesn't necessarily, because if you say standard, there is no, I mean, there's a standard you could say, but that standard, somebody's going to always be trying to meet and not being able to meet it, and others are going to be going over it. So, I mean, it's all relative, I guess. I mean, it could be any way you look at it. I don't like to set specific goals for en masse. So, for instance, my teams, so the 30 people that I have, those team members are coached and managed by and large individually to their personalities. Some of the people, and I have another saying that I say that HR hates when I say. It's called, I treat everybody fair, but not equal. Okay, what does that mean?
Oh, I can imagine they would hate that.
Yeah, they do, but think about it. If you're the Yankees and you're playing the Red Sox or whoever, I don't care. You're playing the Red Sox. I don't follow baseball, but this is just an example.
Yeah.
So if you're the Yankees playing the Red Sox, are you going to go round robin and put your third string pitcher in because it's his turn, or are you going to put your best pitcher on the mound because you're going to you want to take on the Red Sox and cream them, right? You're going to treat everybody fair. Everybody has the same opportunity, but you're going to give that high return opportunity to the person who's producing or is most productive. In most cases, there are some cases you can take a chance and give to someone who may or may not execute, but do you really want to put your company in that position, right? So the key is to say, look at that person. That's where you want to go. Let's go. I'll help you get there, right?
Yeah.
So it's also a learning opportunity for them to say, dang, I wish you would have chosen me. Again, I had an opportunity to move 3 people into a very sweet cherry position. I mean, just guaranteed business. And I chose 3 people that, number one, had assistants that they paid for on their own, and that were ultra high communicators. So when they would work with a consumer, they were communicating. They had a system, a process down that they would talk to that customer 3 times a week, whether it be email, voicemail, text, whatever it is. And I got complaints to HR that said, you're picking these people instead of these people, and he's been here longer, and he has more tenure, and she has, this and that. And again, I showed that everybody had the same opportunity. So that's fair, right? That's the fairness part of it. But the equality piece of it, the equal piece of it, I can't treat you equal because we need to win. We're a company. We're a business. We're a for-profit. We're not a nonprofit. And even a nonprofit, I'm the president of a nonprofit, and we need to win too. We can't operate without winning. We can't.
Yeah,
money just doesn't grow on trees. So anyway, that's my point. Fair, but not equal. Just be careful saying who you say that in front of.
and that's what you said. When you win, we win. It's like you create a team of winners. People now talk about equity instead of equality, because we've come to realize, although it being equal, that was like in vogue maybe 30 years ago or so, people talk about equity and fairness. Every company is now DE&I, diversity, equity, instead, because we know that people aren't equal. You're not the same as me. You're American, you're 56, I'm 32, I'm British, I'm British. Like, so many.
I won't hold against you.
Exactly. Yeah, you call it soccer, I call it football. It's not equal.
Right.
Different game, and different names, different strengths.
Well, you don't feel like you're oppressed, and I don't feel like I'm oppressed. We're not equal. We're fair. We're the same spots. We're just not equal. Yeah.
And we haven't spoken about the childhood where we come from, but I mean, I could be in the victim mode right now. I could say, oh yeah, I was brought up this way, and I went to a poor school, and my parents are both like immigrants, and my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. And all that. I can go into that story, but I don't. Why? I don't need to stay there. And I suppose maybe there's a story that you had, or maybe not, but doesn't matter. It's a story. That's it.
Well, and I used to be, I mean, you can see on LinkedIn, I tell a little bit of my story in one of the articles that I was interviewed for. It's on my second post. It's highlighted. Tells a little bit about my childhood and my brother. I have a twin brother who, as you know, Alex, who does this a lot more than I do in terms of the social media stuff. I'm more in the corporate world. So we've I'm getting off track. Let's just go back to where we were. So you were saying, and I mean, we can go into that later because I don't want to lose track.
Yeah, later maybe. We'll see.
You were saying that I forget what you were saying. You were just saying
equality, equity, fairness kind of game we're talking
fairness.
about.
Yeah.
When you said, I put it up on screen again, I treat everybody fair but not equal. Love that quote. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's leave that then, because that's a pretty powerful statement that it's powerful in many ways. It's powerful to read and see, but it's also a powerful statement to those receiving it. But you got to deliver it, and you got to back it up and tell them why. It'll cause some strife, but it's the way to operate.
I mean, that's the thing. You could be like a people pleaser your entire life and try and do the right thing by others when you're not being true to yourself, or you can stick to your own guns. And sometimes people may not like that. That's not to say to be stubborn and not take some, we all make missteps and make a mistake. And that's about owning up and admitting our wrongs when we've learned the lesson. But sometimes you just got to stay true to yourself. Actually, all the time I would say stay true to yourself. Whenever I've compromised, it's led to hacky situations.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because our definition of compromise as business leaders, growers, teachers, coaches, whatever you want to call it, coming up, I always found that my definition of compromise would change as I was trying to get something that was more difficult done. So you're giving yourself more room to make excuses, right? To make excuses for, oh, well, no, this is okay. This is okay. Next thing you know, you're outside the lines, and you're like, gosh darn it, there's my integrity, my own personal beliefs. So I learned that, coming up as well. And you have to learn from your mistakes. You hate to visit them sometimes. You really hate to visit them sometimes. But I know what I wanted to say earlier was, I don't talk about it often. I used to be embarrassed, but I don't have a college degree. I never, I worked my way up from the bottom. So I think part of the reason why my coaching is so exciting to some people is they're in the same boat. They're in the same boat. They're like, look, I didn't have the opportunity to go to school. Like Steve has his master's. My brother has his master's, but he did that later in life.
Okay.
He did that later in life. So he didn't do it when he went right into the Army. Thank you for your service, Stephen. I see you there. There he goes. Yeah. So you got to you got to stay to your own integrity, morals, and sometimes that feels better than winning, in my opinion. Like, there's times where I'm sticking to my guns, and I may lose a transaction or I may lose an opportunity, but I feel good about it because that's going to keep me some square footing going forward.
Yeah, because it's where
myself.
Exactly. It's where you give yourself leeways, and I'm sure that you've had many times in the business world where you've given yourself, you may have caught yourself saying, oh, I let this one slide, but as soon as you do that one little thing, it leads to a lot more further down the line.
Yep. And you see it when you're in business. You see those people sliding. You see them from 30 feet away. In my business, you can see them doing it the next day, the day after that. It might take a year or whatever. You can see them going down that road, and you're like, please don't. In our business, it's a lot of compliance, and they'll say, oh, I'll just check this box because the consumer forgot. Well, you can't do that. You can't do that, because once you do that, next thing you're going to do is copy it. Then you're going to, and it just goes down the road. And that's just one small example, but that small example can get you fired.
Exactly. And even in the business that I do now, everything, not every single thing I do, but a lot of what I run by a guy who is unofficially my compliance guy. Is twice my age, ex-army guy. I'm not going to say his name, but I run stuff by him, like contracts, and then he'd be like, no, or a post on social media and be like, no, you have to change this. There was something I was going to put up on the website, and I didn't. And I sent him the video. He just drilled me for half an hour on being like, this can't go up there. And when I worked at PwC or Meta or even Highball, I had managers and people in my team who would do that, and that would usually go to a second review to a director or partner. But in the business, the buck stops on me.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to revert back to something that you said earlier. You mentioned about when we were having that discussion, the question that Hal raised. We've still got time, 20 minutes or so. If anyone wants to raise a question like Hal did when we were talking about this being uncomfortable, and you said, you said business and work, about like setting basically for them. But I would also add to that family too. Now I don't have kids of my own, but I do know with my partner, my fiance, that say for example, if I did get comfortable for a moment, and maybe there have been times I don't remember, but if I got comfortable and I was like, yeah, business is making enough money and this and that, we can pay for the wedding, we can pay for this, and I just stopped for a second and I'd lean back and I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable now. Maybe not immediately, but at some point down the line, she wouldn't have had kids. They would look at me and be like, and one day I may wake up and I have a beer in my hand on the couch with a big belly watching football. Yeah, that's what I don't want to get to.
Yeah, well, and if you're a business person and you're successful and that's how you've, I've identified myself as a business person long before I identified myself as Scott Kuhn, and it took me a while to get out of that because my identity was my business. And you got to be careful on that. In the beginning, that's fine in my opinion, but when you get the family and the kids and then you get into philanthropy and you really want to have an individual identity because sometimes it doesn't coincide with your business and you want to keep that church and state separate. But getting that comfortable isn't just about your health. It's about your business. It's about your relationships. And what you're going to find is, let me give you a story. So when I first got into business in 1992, wow. Were you born yet? No. When I first got in the finance business, I had 2 national bosses, right? I mean, they ran the whole country, 2 of them. And they were always a little bit out of touch, right? So one of my biggest things in business is, and I coach this all the time. In fact, I'm being courted right now to take over an entire organization and start from scratch. I mean, a big deal, right? Not sure I'm going to do it, but I'm just being courted. Might be a consulting gig, but building from the beginning is something I like to do. But if you don't take the time to understand what it is you're working on, you're going to have a hard time getting to the place you want to get to. But getting comfortable is all part of that understanding. So you have these 2 guys that ran the whole country getting comfortable, right? And I've seen this my whole career. And because I didn't have a degree, I always felt like I had to work harder and a lot longer. I mean, if I was at night, if I was sleeping, I couldn't sleep, I'd go to the office and I'd work. That was before computers. So don't yeah. So anyway, so these 2 gentlemen, and they remain unnamed today. One's a real estate agent, which is fine. And the other one is works at a call center, which is fine. But these were presidents of a national organization. They got so comfortable, they lost their way. So to stay relevant, you need to stay in the game. And getting comfortable is going to get you out of the game. So people my age in this business, that's typically what happens. And in the finance business, unless you're particularly an FA or wealth advisor, because you're building a book, you're going to get comfortable to the point where it's going to pass you by. These young guys are going to just start, right? Next thing you know, you can't catch up. You got to get out of the business or you're not successful. And that's what happened to those 2. So I always look back at that as a big motivator for me is I have to stay fresh. I have to continue to learn. I mean, my big reason for being with you today is not to talk about me, but to learn. I mean, I want to hear what everybody has to say. I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to give me, the questions you're giving me are from your previous experience that you've had with so many people that you've interviewed. So, that's one of the main reasons I did it today. I did it for my growth, not for your growth or anybody else's.
Brilliant.
If that's a byproduct, that's great.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, anyone who wants to, come on, help Scott learn, I'm going to learn. We're all going to learn together, and we still got some time, maybe 10 minutes or so. Just comment down below. And there's a lot that I've learned. I've learned so much from the other people I've seen in my life. Like you mentioned, those 2 people. And seeing people, seeing their successes, and where maybe they haven't stepped up as much, which is fine, as you said, it's their life. But I look at that and then I see what can I do differently? because it's only me. The only person I have control over is me. That was a hard lesson to learn that I can't, because my dad's a control freak, and me trying to control and manipulate other people never worked. So now I just focus only on myself. And you being a leader, again, your philosophy, and we spoke about that, right? Your leadership philosophy about mentoring people beyond their capabilities, we touched upon. But what about that, customer experience, consumer? You deal with what, high net worth clients? These people are very, they have very unique personalities, I would call it. You understand a lot better than I do. So
how do, yes. Yeah,
go for it. I mean, how do you commit to giving them that experience that they pay for, they want and need from you?
Right. Well, and the differentiator in our business, quite frankly, when you're dealing with high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals and organizations in that same space, it's all about the experience. That's what's different. Price is important, execution's obviously important, but at that level, everybody's executing and everybody's pretty much at the same price, and we're close. We can make it happen. If you're lower here, lower there, higher there, we can do that. It's the experience is going to make the difference. So it's a very simple statement that I make to my team constantly, in and out, day in and day out. And this actually references a little bit to what Hal just asked, but we'll get to that in a second. It's delivering an experience unlike any they've ever had. So that's the statement that I use to my team. Make sure you're delivering an experience unlike any you've ever had. And along the way, don't assume anything. Don't assume they know what you're talking about. Don't, especially in our business, you use a lot of vernacular that they're not used to. Use a lot of, acronyms, and just because it's all we speak in banking, right, is acronyms pretty much. In fact, at Wells Fargo, we had a site just for acronyms in our own business, thousands of them. What's this stand for? What's that stand for? Internally, so we knew what each other was talking about. Yeah, seriously. So, but anyway, that's an important piece of it too. And that experience, you don't ever reach a goal where you're there, if you know what I mean. So along the way, I have a call. Hey, Mr. Owner of the Phillies, or whoever, that we're dealing with. How's your experience been so far? Is there anything I can do for you more? Do you have any questions? Can we go over some of the organizational docs that we went through? Should we work with your accountant? Should we work with your CPA? Should we work with your attorney? Would you like to be copied on the emails? Would you like to be, updated once a week? How would you? They don't ask those questions. They go, this is what I want. Okay, here, I'll be back to you with any questions I have. And then 2 weeks go by and they're like, hey, what's going on with my deal? What's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're cruising right along. Well, why don't I know about it?
Exactly.
You don't think this guy's successful because you think he's successful because he lets stuff just drop off and hope that the person's going to get back to him? Heck no, man. They need to be involved every day, all day. So when Hal says, isn't that life work balance you refer to less of a goal and more of a constant journey, ever adjusting? You're absolutely right, because your life changes. Same thing goes for the consumer experience. That consumer experience is not a goal you reach. It's something you're continually adjusting and striving for, because just like coaching people and just like running a successful team, there's individuality to every single consumer and every single customer that you have. Yes. Yep. Looks like he's on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Yep. So So that consumer experience, it drives that drove a lot of our success, because where do you get your next opportunity from? From a consumer or a client that you've dealt with that was just overwhelmed with how you delivered. I mean, if you get someone to write something about you, you're doing well. And by the way, if you get one of those, so for instance, we'll see it backdoor sometimes. So we'll get a letter from the CEO or from the chairman that says, hey, we got this letter about you from a customer you dealt with. I didn't even know that they wrote the letter, right? So that comes full circle. And you see that later, like, glowing reports of how I've never had somebody do this to us, and I want my team to get those letters. If you don't go back to that customer, number one, and thank them, and then eventually work into asking for referrals, if you're in sales, you're missing an opportunity. They're going to go out of their way to send you referrals. But if you don't ask, maybe they're not going to think about it.
Yeah, it's about bringing that glow up inside. And you can see it in people's eyes. This is something that I started to look for, like maybe 2.5 years ago. You can literally see a sparkle, a twinkle in people's eyes, like a literal light go off when they feel that joy when you've done something that makes them feel good. And sometimes it's a little, I remember one time in a barber shop and I saw it in like a little child, like a barber giving the lolly. Sometimes it's in business, you know, whenever I've like really knocked it out of the park and I've seen the other person really achieve something they could never even think possible. That's all, that way they look is brilliant. And then about making it, like thanking them, making the ask, showing appreciation. And then they give that off. You have no idea how it's going to affect other people in the future. They may go off and then they may help someone else, and then that ripple effect will continue.
Yeah, and there's one little tip that just, I don't know why it's coming up right now, that I think a lot of people miss. A real easy one is anybody that you're going to interface with that's going to be one of your clients, Google them first. And after their name, put board member, president, charity, philanthropy. And you'll be surprised how many people have a lot of things in common with you if you're involved in philanthropy. So many times you can break down barriers instantly when you meet that person. So for instance, you talked about different personalities. You might meet a high net worth individual I had one client that I worked with that just a known bear. I mean, just a bear. And before he came over, I checked out everything about him I could find. I had to dig. And I found out that he had this organization that he started to help the elderly take advantage of all of the government programs that are out there, because by and large, they don't know how to do that. And they don't have the wherewithal to do that. It's a lot of work. So he started a charity that you can contact. And there were some elderly folks that were getting thousands and thousands of dollars a month that they never knew they were able to get for rent subsidies and mortgage subsidies, electric, gas, water, heat, food, and it's all available through the government. So he started this, but he didn't talk about it ever.
Oh, wow.
Ever, right? So we sat down and we were sitting at this big conference table with all his wealth people around him. And he started talking. He's, the bear coming out. I said, hey, by the way, I see that you're involved in something I'm involved with. What are you talking about? And I referenced something that I was doing in that similar space in philanthropy. I was philanthropist of the year that year in my own community. And it was for the elderly, what I call special abilities, or instead of disabilities, I call them abilities, because they're different. And his whole face, his demeanor, his whole spirit changed.
Softens,
instantly, because I went personal. Now you don't want to go so personally, like, hey, I heard your son got arrested for blah. You don't want to go there. But you want to go personal, and something that they do that's really passionate about them, and you're going to break down walls and barriers. And by the way, that person, to this day, I can pick up the phone and call him, and he's up there near the B's, the billions. So
that's just like going in something that will open them up personally. We all love talking and being when someone knows about ourselves, and this is something that I'm going to wrap up in a few minutes, get to John's question now that you close up. But this is something that I remember a few years ago, I think it was 4 years ago, I started developing the executive level engagement training. One of the trainings that I still do today. And, as I was going through it with my manager at the time, I was like, we were speaking about it, and then it was like, oh yeah, you need to include something about doing their homework. The salespeople have to do their homework on the prospects. And I was like, that's way too basic. They should be doing that already. These people that are like high performers, they know how to do their homework. And you would be shocked at the amount. I've delivered that training to over 600 people over the years, I believe. You'll be shocked that nearly every single time it's like schooling them, looking on LinkedIn, Instagram, like Googling their name followed by this and that. Apollo. Where can you find that news articles? Like in the UK have company tests, you can look up company financial information. All this stuff that I thought everyone did, but no one's doing it apparently, and you did it. You did it with that guy, like finding out something about him, and that sets you apart.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's simple. The problem is, again, you get comfortable.
That's the whole thing back to.
You stop doing those little things that mean a lot. Because think about it, a ton of little things are going to be much more impactful than one big thing, because that's a continual process, much like Hal says. It's continually adding to that mound of success you're building. So how did we meet up? Why don't you tell them how we met up, John?
The content growth. John's asking, and this is probably the final one, how did us two meet up? And you're in the States. You said Philly, is that right?
Yeah, Philly area, yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yep. Yeah, nice. We met through my brother, Steve.
Through Stephen. Stephen introduced us. So Stephen I've known since 2020. I was in Yeah, Stephen's the European brother of the two.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how the
He takes care of that hemisphere. I take care of this hemisphere.
Exactly. Yeah, you got the two, and two of you are going for global domination. Is that it?
What's that?
You and Stephen going for global domination, world domination.
Global domination. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's just you get to a point in your life where you want a little bit more of a challenge. You want a little bit more of a giving back. Like philanthropy is a big part of my life. It always has been. When I was young, I mean, when I first got into business, I sat on boards, and that's another way that committees at that point, because I wasn't old enough to really make an impact, but that's another way to look. But anyway, that's all part of coaching. So when it comes to coaching, I don't do a whole lot of it because I have full organizations that I take care of, that I help grow and help. That's what I'm doing right now with my current employer, is building out a whole new segment for them that they don't have a foothold in like they would like. So I was brought over they asked me to come over to do that. But I do have time from time to time, for maybe two more people that might want to coach, once a week, once every other week, something like that. So if anybody on here is interested in that, be my guest. Give me an outreach. And I'd love it to be as specific as you want. Come to me with that. Be very, 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 very specific in what you want. And I'll be happy to talk to you about that, because if it's not, it's got to be great for both of us. And I really want it to be impactful. I want to create for that coaching recipient an experience unlike any they've ever had.
Yeah, what we spoke about earlier.
Right, exactly.
Yep. So we have that in the chat over there. Scott.Kuhn@icloud.com. John's still hitting up some questions. So I'll let the two of you take that offline, if that's cool with both of you. But Scott, this has been a really great chat. We're coming toward the end of our time. So what kind of, what would you say? I mean, we spoke, I guess the main thing we spoke about being comfortable and uncomfortable, but is there any final words of wisdom you want to share in the final 60 seconds or so?
I mean, it sounds so cliche, but I mean, enjoy what you do. Yeah. If you don't enjoy what you do, you're never going to get to the point that we're talking right now. You and I are talking from the heart, from the head, from the gut, right? That's called enjoying what you do. That's passion. That's love. That's everything. And by the way, that drives in every part of your life. If you don't like this part of your life in business, the rest of it's going to be impacted negatively, and vice versa. Yeah. So be happy, enjoy what you do.
Exactly. Be happy and joyous. And I'm going to finish off with one thing myself, because I meditate every morning. And the thing that came through in this morning meditation was literally that. Say, be joyous, smile and laugh, whatever you do. Scott, thank you for helping me smile even more.
All right. Thank you, Alex. I appreciated the opportunity.
Welcome. Take care.
Take care. Thanks.